Witches. The absolutely true tale of disaster in Salem. By Roselyn Schanzer. Chapter 5. A Torrent of Evil. In late April, a deluge of new accusations spewed forth, spreading like the plague, farther and farther away from Salem village itself to 34 different towns. Between April 20th and April 30th, 15 additional complaints were entered into the books, and between May 2nd and June 6th, 39 more people were charged with witchcraft. Everyone got into the act. Brothers accused brothers. Neighbors accused neighbors. Parents accused their children. And husbands accused their wives. Accusers claimed they had been scratched and bitten and maimed and pricked and disjointed and bloodied and blinded and deafened by invisible furies that no one else could see. Some poor souls said they had been dragged out of their own bedrooms and forced to soar over the treetops to a secret place where they were pressured to sign the Devil's Book of Laws. And the worst of all was this crippling fear. Seated directly beside you in your very own church might lurk even more witches, cleverly disguised as pious worshipers of the Lord. The record books named 74 people who said they were attacked by witches, and at least 59 of that 74 were female. These so-called victims were as young as 9 years old and as old as 81, plus another woman described in court records as being ancient. The afflicted accusers were not satisfied by pointing out just one witch either. Almost all of them made lots of complaints that got people arrested. For example, Paris's niece, Abigail Williams, fingered 41 different witches for attacking her. M. Putnam Jr. accused 53. Her servant, Mercy Lewis, blamed 54. And a girl named Mary Walcott, who was Anne's step-cousin, named an astonishing 69 witches. Besides all those victims, a number of Puritans suffering from fits were not officially listed. Some had confessed that they were witches themselves, some were babies too young to complain, and some were men who never accused any witches of making them sick. Since babies can't fake their symptoms, and the men didn't claim they were bewitched, surely some of these victims were actually sick. All kinds of people were accused of witchcraft. There was a fortune teller, a man who was a judge in the witch trials, and the governor's own wife. There were 3 floor sweepers, a folk healer, a pirate, and a physician who practiced counter magic. There were weavers and watermen, blacksmiths and bricklayers, and there were slaves, merchants, shoemakers, ministers, and servants, plus 2 officers in the militia and plenty of farmers. Even the wealthiest couple in Salem town did not escape arrest. Not all of the witches were human beings. A girl accused 2 dogs of belonging to the devil and said they could cause fits by simply staring at their victims. They were hanged by the neck without benefit of trial. A 3rd dog was bewitched in the town of Andover, supposedly by the magistrate's own brother, who rode upon its back. This dog was executed too. The same magistrate had refused to send anyone else to jail when more than 50 people were arrested at one time around May 14th. For that reason, he was suspected of being a witch as well. So he and his wife and his brother fled. And what did a witch look or act like? There was a hilly-faced man, a woman with scragged teeth, a woman who had catalepsy, which meant that she went into trances and became as rigid as a statue. A crooked-backed woman, and a woman who was broken in her mind. The age of a witch didn't matter one whit. Those accused of witchcraft ranged from age 4 all the way up to age 90. Of course, the jails were bursting at the seams, and it wasn't a pretty picture. All of these horrible dungeons stank to high heaven. People were questioned mercilessly, and if they didn't give the right answers, they were tortured. If someone on the outside couldn't bring food to the prisoners when they were hungry, or bring them a blanket when they were freezing, or bring them money to pay for their own room and board, they were out of luck. What's even worse, many prisoners had to leave their babies and young children at home without a bit of care from an adult or a single scrap of food to eat. And if any adults were still at home, how are they supposed to tend their crops alone, visit their loved ones at a far-off prison, or pay the jail fees, especially if they were poor in the first place? Despite the crowding, more and more people were funneled into jail every day. Take Bridget Bishop, for example. People had been calling her a witch for 10 years, ever since an African slave named Juan claimed that her specter had stolen some eggs, spooked a team of horses, and pinched him. Bishop ran a rowdy tavern in Salem town that catered to sailors and other travelers who went there to spend the night, drink rum, and play the evil game of shuffleboard after the neighbors had gone to bed. Bishop was known for wearing a bright red bodice, and gossip had it that she was a prostitute too. Worse yet, she was suspected of killing her first husband, had been beaten regularly by her second husband, and quarreled late into the night with her third. Bishop had never once set foot in Salem Village, but on April 18th, she was placed under arrest because her specter had supposedly flown there to torture 5 Salem Village girls. She was questioned the very next day. First, the girls said she was a witch. Then, the magistrate himself accused her of bewitching her first husband to death. Bishop insisted that she knew nothing about such attacks, shaking her head and rolling her eyes in frustration. As usual, the 5 afflicted girls blamed Bishop's specter when their own heads shook violently back and forth and their own eyes rolled wildly in response. "I am innocent," Bishop testified. "I never saw these persons before, nor I never was in this place before. I have made no contract with the devil. I never saw him in my life." At that, Ann Putnam Jr. shouted out, "She calls the devil her god!" Recorder Ezekiel Cheevers noted that 2 men told her to her face that she was taken in a plain lie. 5 afflicted persons do charge this woman to be the very woman that hurts them. All their actions have great influence upon the afflicted persons, and they have been tortured by her. As spring breezes warmed the air of Salem on May 10th and 11th, a farmer named George Jacobs Sr. and his granddaughter Margaret were being questioned by the magistrates when Margaret confessed that she was a witch. Then she testified that her grandfather and a reverend named George Burroughs were both wizards. By May, plenty of people knew that if you confessed, you would be treated much better than suspects who claimed they were innocent. If you named extra suspects, you even got to stay in a nicer part of the jail. Now, it just so happened that Margaret's grandfather was a toothless 80-year-old man with rheumatism who could only walk with the aid of 2 walking sticks. Yet, despite his sorry physique, 12 screeching accusers claimed that Jacob's specter had beaten them. Lewis joined the fray. "He did torture me most cruelly by beating me with 2 sticks. It almost put my bones out of joint, but I told him I would not write in his book if he would give me all the world." This particular testimony made Jacobs laugh out loud in court. When the magistrate asked why, he said, "Because I am falsely accused. Your worships, Do you all think that this is true? He asked incredulously. I am as innocent as your worships. Sarah Churchill, George Jacobs' maidservant, had already confessed to being a witch to save her own self. In her desire to be let off the hook, she became Jacob's strongest accuser. And maybe she had another reason too. When she had told Jacobs earlier that fits were keeping her from doing any work, he had called her a witch. Here's what else he said at his hearing. George Jacobs. You tax me for a wizard? You may as well tax me for a buzzard. I have done no harm. The devil can go in any shape. Magistrate, not without your consent. Why do you not pray in your family? Jacobs. I cannot read. Burn me or hang me. I will stand in the truth of Christ.